Welcome back to Radio Juxtapoz. My name is Doug Gillen. Today you join us from Peckham in South London as I sit down for a one-on-one with multidisciplinary artist and musician Cato. I first saw Cato's work at a group show back at the start of the year. Two figures sat on stools playing instruments. The collaged layers of the work loosely built upon each other with a naivety that felt both intentional and effortless. Grossly enlarged hands, far too big for the strings of the guitar, somehow connected the visual to the auditory sensations as notes burst from the canvas. Airbrushed features pulled everything back into some sense of reality, albeit one that was disjointed and filled with that kind of haunting ghost-like quality. At only 24 years old, without a solo show under his belt, I'm really enjoying watching this young self-taught artist carve his own path into the art world. Over the course of this conversation today, we discuss the influence his parents have had on this creativity, the joys of airbrushing, and the future plans that he has as both an artist and a musician. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Radio Juxtapoz podcast wherever you are listening in from. Both Evan and I really do appreciate the continued support that each one of you give us every single week. No further notes, let's get into it right now. You are listening to Radio Juxtapoz in conversation with Cato. Toby, thank you so much for joining us today. Toby Grant, Cato, what am I calling you?
Let's go with Cato. I use Cato, that's my middle name, and I use that for my art practice and my music.
Where does that come from? Can I ask you that?
My mum named me Toby and my dad wanted to call me Cato. Cato was one of my granddad's mates he was one of the few that were had time for the kids, had time for my dad. So he always respected him and it's a cool name, so...
It's a very cool name. I don't meet too many Catos. I assumed when I first saw it, and especially with your with that aesthetic that you have in your work, I had assumed it was coming from graffiti, but it's not.
Yeah, I used that as my tag growing up as well.
There is a graffiti hand in there somewhere.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Where did you grow up? Brighton?
Yeah, I grew up in Brighton.
What was that like?
Yeah, it's cool, man. Brighton's a cool place. It's super diverse in terms of the sort of people that are walking around and that I grew up with. It's pretty middle class place, but there's a variety of backgrounds of my mates, and it's quite small, it's quite concentrated. It's a good place to grow up though, I think.
It's funny, I always think that it is middle class, but then I remember the preconception I had of it was that it was it was really middle class. And then you get there, it's still pretty, you walk down the street there, it's still got a pretty rough edge to it. It's not overly polished. It definitely feels like there's a little undercurrent there.
It's got that sort of British seaside town thing, slightly barren parts of it. Yeah, that seeps in a bit, but then they got posh coffee shops and whatnot as well, you know what I mean? So a bit of both.
Was art always a part of your life? Or I get the sense, because you're so multi-practitional, and I get the sense that art and music have just been in your life, and I feel that immediately. But is that the case?
I was always drawing. I remember my mum, I've got these photos, and my mum would draw dinosaurs for me to colour in. My mum's an artist. Both my parents are massive music lovers as well. So there was always cool albums on in the car and whatnot. It was always there. Music I came to later in terms of making it. But yeah, it was pretty much always there.
Did it always feel like it was going to be, this is the thing that I'm going to do? Or was it something that kind of maybe just came in later? Because you're still super young, right?
Yeah, I think when I was about 15 or something, my mum was like, so what are you going to do then, do you reckon? And I was like, I kind of paused and was like, maybe film. But I knew I knew I wanted to do something creative. At one point I thought I'd do science, but I kind of thought, if I do art, I can still incorporate science. If I do science, I probably wouldn't do much art, you know what I mean?
Do you think then that there is still, because some artists I can see there's still a connection if they have, if their hobbies astronomy, I can, okay, cool, I see that. But looking at your work, I'm not 100% sure I can see the science world.
More of my animation stuff, I think science comes into it with that. physics and like science fiction, I suppose, come into my animation a bit more, which is something I might do in the paintings at one point. I made this short film that was quite like sci-fi called Black Moon, and I think you can see it in that, but it's in the back of my mind all the time.
What elements of science is when you say science, because it's such a broad spectrum? It's like saying art, you know. It's like, okay, cool, that could be a million things. What is it about that particular field that particularly interests you?
I think growing up, it was natural biology. Like it was like I always had the books of all the animals of the jungle, things like that, and I was obsessed with dinosaurs.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Probably Diplodocus. Got a toy of that on my...
I had to ask that. I know people are going to be like, what the fuck? This is an art podcast. We're a serious art podcast. I'm like, no, man, I want to know what the fucking guy's favorite dinosaur is.
I can't remember what it's called, but there was one... I had this sick DVD of Walking with Dinosaurs, and there was one with these giant claws that I really liked. Mostly it was animal stuff, and then later I got into physics and chemistry. Like,
there's a solid generational age difference between us. I'm 37. I'll openly hold my hands up to that, and you're in your sort of mid to early 20s, right? Mm-hmm. I guess it's that kind of thing that older people tend to do. They're just so obsessed with the youth. But your generation, I mean, we were at that kind of turning point of technology coming in and people being able to have access in ways to tools that they didn't have. But you, by the time you were in high school, that was already part and parcel. The audience as well that would have come through social media and stuff like that, it feel really commonplace that people would be exercising that kind of creativity in different ways.
I think, yeah, it's probably much more open access. Like I remember when I first got Instagram, it was probably first year of secondary school, and I would just put my drawings up there, mm-hmm. and people would sort of take the piss. Like my mates would be like, oh, like sharing your art or whatever. But that was definitely normal to do. People would put up different things. And my mate Jago put up YouTube clips of him rapping and him and his mates rapping and stuff. That was like a way to get that out there. There were people doing that sort of thing, having YouTube channels for their music, mm-hmm. when I was super young. So that was like an obvious avenue to do it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the artists, especially musicians, I guess, that were like coming out at that time, it was all on their own back from YouTube. Particularly
music as well, because that was that turning point once things like SBTV started to blow up and those channels. It was like that's where the next people that are going to be the stars on Radio 1 are going to be coming from. They're coming from these little DIY channels and this kind of really from the culture.
And just after the grime stuff as well, which was more like on actual cameras versus iPhones, I guess.
Yeah.
Like on little handy cams.
Did it feel like the visual art was as open and accessible? And I always find this relationship between, for the general public, music is just part of everyone's life. There's nobody that, like, especially if you're under 30, right? Everybody's, always got their headphones on, they're on the bus, they're listening, they're consuming music constantly. But people, if you ask, the average 25-year-old who their favorite, name 5 living visual artists, I think most of them, and maybe it's a generalization, but I think they'd probably struggle. They'd definitely find it harder to name 5 living artists than 5 living musicians.
Yeah, they'd stutter at least.
I wonder if it felt like that world was maybe open for you.
Yeah, I think for the art stuff I was looking at when I was super young was more like cartoons and comic books. And in Brighton, there's a lot of illustrators, like the guys who made The Edge Chronicles, which is a book I loved when I was like a kid. They were down the road. So that side of it was more of a thing. Like, it wasn't like painters that I was thinking about. It was more like cartoonists. Whereas the music thing, I could see that was possible for people to try to give that a crack. That was much more like of an option.
So was that side of the visual stuff just more appeal? Did it just maybe appeal to you more as a 16-year-old guy, right? Like for me, art wasn't a thing, and this is what I've always tried to talk about whenever I do the podcast or my own stuff. It's like art wasn't a thing, and all I've ever wanted to try do, having since being involved in art, is try and make it more accessible, because it was so alien for me. And did that fine art world feel like it was still something othered?
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I grew up going to a lot of galleries with my parents.
I guess you say your mum was an artist. What kind of artist was she?
My mum
was.
Yeah, is. She's done some really cool drawings recently. She's done a bunch of stuff. She did a lot of sculptures that were around my house, like these little miniature mountains from the back of like some Renaissance paintings. She'd take them out and plaster cast them, and she also did like amazing collages and drawings and stuff.
Is there a connection then between these two? Do you think if I looked at both your work,
you might spot it? She does these collages where she'd get
collage was the word that
it's not quite collage. What she'd do is she'd get a picture of like a whole class from a school, from a newspaper or something, and she'd just draw everything apart from the faces would be scribbled out, but in really beautiful scribbles. So there's the faces that were left. So that's similar, but I learned that through my sister Jazz and Maya, who both experiment with stuff like that. That's more of a straight link, and then I've come into it after that, I suppose.
So you're a creative family.
Yeah.
How many are you?
Two sisters.
All currently working in the arts?
Yeah.
Damn, that's good. That's a nurturing environment. That's really cool. You ever think you'd do like a family show or something?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's
at least we've all worked together on stuff. Yeah, I worked with my sister Maya and her partner Dominic on like music videos. And then I've worked with Jazz on a bunch of stuff for her, like assisting her and stuff like that. So
kind of it's supportive rather than competitive? Is there a competitive edge in there?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bit of both. But I definitely saw, like, Jazz is the oldest, and she was doing fashion, and then she started doing these amazing collages alongside that. And then she started getting jobs doing them. And I was like, oh shit, you can do that. That was like... penny dropped sort of thing. And that's what just around the time I left uni. What were you in uni for, and what, can I ask why you left? Did you leave because you finished, or was there a different story? Yeah, no, I dropped out on one of them. I came to London and went to CSM on, what do you call it, like last chance to get into college. Clearance. Fucking clearance. That was it. I was clearance as well. Yeah, I was scrambling on to anything. Yeah, I'd had a year just working in Brighton at a restaurant, and then I feel like my dad was like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, shit, probably." And I've been teaching myself animation. I went on clearing and saw what was available. There's like a graphics course at CSM, and I just like got something together really quick. Like these drawings I'd done, I made like a little comic book out of them, and just took that and my laptop with animations on it, and then asked him if I could do animation there, and they was like, yeah, sure. And then it wasn't really like that when I got there, and I'm just not very good at school. Like I enjoy learning and that, but when it comes to getting on with the work, like, and handing it in, I just always just put it off, never submitted it. Same thing happened all the way through, so I kind of knew I was doomed to leave, I think. But it was a cool experience though. I think that's the thing, you do get the sense, and for me it was like, it definitely felt like it was a slog. You know, you see those people and they're in it, they love that environment, they love the institution. I'm here to learn. And for me it was like, look, I like this experience, I like the idea that I have access to be able to learn this stuff. But this doesn't. I just want to get out into the real world. Yeah, 100%. I was just ready for it. Yeah, I was a bit older than the students as well. A lot of them were 18, and I was like 21, and I was already doing my thing. Like I was figuring it out, so I didn't feel as reliant on it. Where did this visual language come from then? This current stuff. How long has this been part of I mean, I've seen sketches and things like that, and it feels like there's kind of like a continuous evolution. Yeah, my mum said that the other day, because actually when I was about 17, I was drawing Romeo Bearden's work, who is where I got this visual language from, really. My dad gave me these books which had his art on the covers. It was this series of books called The Harlem Cycle. I started just drawing them so that my drawings would be more interesting. What he would do is get magazine portraits, or like just photos from magazines, and cut them up So when I started painting on canvas like a year and a half ago, and learned this method of the airbrush. I was doing someone's album cover, and they didn't like it, and I was just cutting it up, and then I was like, oh shit, I can do that thing but with these paintings now. So that was my first like true like idea I've had since I've been painting. So I was so excited that it came easy to just like start doing them.
I read in one of the interviews that you had done, you had said, steal from your favorite pieces and eventually it'll become your own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could give me an example of something that you stole and that eventually did become your own.
Yeah, like, so I stole his whole thing really, but he also said the same. I kind of got that from him, I think, from Romeo Bidden maybe. And like, there's some quote that they say Picasso said, but who knows? But he says like, great artists steal. So I'll steal like that one's from a photo. They're all from photos, so it's all someone else's work. It's all an artist's work, and it's all someone I don't know's face. So I haven't asked for permission, but
but here we are.
But I've interpreted it, I've changed it, and I feel like free to do that. And like all the methods I use, I've seen other people do them, and been so excited to try them that I can't help myself. But it's always in respect and love for what they've done, so I feel like it's an homage, you know what I mean?
You know, every single artist that's currently operating is doing that to some degree, some more so than others.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I think some definitely getting away with it. So how do you build a scene then? So paint that picture for me. Where does it sort of start?
Actually, a good example of stealing something is that I went to Martin Wong like 2 weeks ago, and he did these amazing brick walls. It was a show in Camden. And I was really stuck on this painting, and then I was like, oh, I'll just do the bricks. And I was like, by figuring out what he'd done, that took all the pressure away. I was just slowly building up this background. But this painting, for example, it was this yellow guy, and there was a woman next to him, and they were in a yellow room. And then it was kind of cool, but it's kind of pissed me off. So I just got rid of the background and put them in the water. And then that didn't work, so I got rid of that. It was quite an arduous one. So then I just went back to the street, which I'm comfortable with, but I changed it by doing this different style of wall behind them. But what I'll do is I'll just find cool photos from books that I've got, or from Instagram, and I'll find cool facial expressions, and that's what I'll start with, and I'll paint them with acrylic and then airbrush. And then start to collage them together once I've got I've got some interesting faces that maybe work together a little bit.
Is there a sort of universal theme of what you're trying to communicate through your work?
I don't know. I think I am very interested in people and their faces. Sometimes when I look at them, it reminds me of like when you see someone cool, someone look amazing walk down the street, and you're like, oh my god, wow, and then they're gone, and then you kind of relate into them a little bit. They might catch your eye and they recognize you, and then you get this little interaction, but then they're gone. And I think it's about that. I think it's about like the little stories you see. But yeah, I don't know. There's other themes as well. Like I'm just doing it, and then it comes afterwards what it means. I think most of the time.
Why airbrush? What is it about that effect? Because it's a particular effect, and I think it works so well. But what is it for you that really interests you about that? Well,
I was away. I was living in Mexico City for a while, and me and my ex-partner we were always like, oh, we should try the airbrush. It looks so fun. And then we got out of the cab in the city, and there was a whole shop of just airbrush parts because they've got crazy shops out there. So we were like, oh, we got to get one. And then you get it, and then you start messing around with it. And it's just way too fun. Like, it's just so fun. You can create like shadows so easily. It's just another toy, like, to draw with. And that actually I hadn't been painting really until I got the airbrush. And because it was new and fun, it like got me super excited. And I think the thing is that you can create light. It's so easy to create light. Everyone's got to try it because it's just like, bomb, it happens so quickly. That it frees up your decision making because that part is easy. You're not spending hours trying to get the shadow right with a brush. Like, it comes super quick. So it's just fun. It's just spontaneous. Creates a kind of photographic texture. If you try and copy a photo, you can do it really easily.
Got a kind of vintage feel to it behind there as well. It's like a kind of like a found photo aesthetic.
Yeah, it's got the found photo thing, and also I think it was kind of popping in the 80s, so it's got a kind of 80s thing to it as well. Like I think that's when they were using it a lot in graphics and stuff.
Since we've been talking, I've heard you mention a couple of different art shows that you've been to. Have you always been interested in, like, because every artist I talk to has got different experience. Some literally have no interest in the current art world at all. Will go to a show once every 3 years, and other ones are like in and out. You know, where are you sort of sitting in that spectrum?
Well, I don't go to that many shows. Usually it'll be someone, if someone's like, oh, this one's coming up, that's basically when I go. Usually I see old like posthumous shows and stuff, like the Martin Wong one. I think he died in the 80s or 90s.
The sort of bigger shows.
Yeah, and then I'm super excited about the Philip Guston that opens, or it's open maybe, and I'm going to go to tomorrow. Other than that, it's just word of mouth.
It feels like there's quite a really energetic live London art scene at the moment. Is that something that you're kind of paying attention to, or is it something you're trying to distance yourself from? Because the scene is always like it's part and parcel of the art game, but it feels like just now that scene part is more alive than I think it has been in quite a while.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things happening. There's a lot of young people putting on like interesting shows, like on a kind of guerrilla thing. I don't know, I'm not super plugged into it, what's going on in the scene, I suppose. Just through friends, I can see what they're doing. A few sort of counter-culture shops and stuff that will put on pop-ups. But yeah, I'll just see someone that I know in a show, and then I'll go to that and get to see like a few people that I've been aware of, like in a little exhibition. So
your work is now being shown in institutional spaces. Does that feel like it's been quite a natural thing to happen? Is that something you've had to go search for, and is it something you've been like figuring out, like, how do I make it work in this art game?
No, not quite like that. But yeah, like I said, I was away in Mexico. That's when I started painting, and it was just so fun. It was something I always wanted to do, and I got put off from doing when I was at school because I just had bad experiences with school, like I was saying before. And then when I was painting, I started doing like triptychs and stuff. I was getting really excited because it was like developing. Ronan Mackenzie, she just hit me up and was like, oh, I love these paintings, like I'd love to put them in a show. And that was the first time I'd thought about them being in a show. But I was away in Mexico, so I had to bundle them up in clothes and send them in luggage back to London. So that was the first time I'd thought about showing them.
When was that?
That was probably 2022, yeah. Like maybe like February or something. She put me in a few things, including that show in Margate at Carl Friedman. So it was through her that I even thought about exhibitions, and it gave me a lot of energy and confidence to like focus in on painting on canvas as like a thing to pursue, even though I've been enjoying it so much already.
Did it feel before that you were like working towards something? And I think that's always the kind of the tricky thing. It's like really easy to just get into a place where you're making stuff, and then it's different once there's like, this is what I'm making it for.
Yeah, I think when I first dropped out of uni, around then I was doing animation with my sister Jazz. I was helping her animate her stuff. I started getting a few jobs for that, so I was like, oh, okay, I can make a living off animating. And then when I met my ex-partner, Afan, she was painting, and that was like, oh shit, you can paint, like you can get a studio and do paintings. That was super inspiring. We had a few shared studios where we'd just be making, for the sake of it, frantically making things, filling up the space until a job would come in for an animation. Then we'd do that. And I got enough money off one job to go to Mexico. And then I had time. I had a bit of time, so it was like, and we had space, so it's like, oh, I can paint. Like it was just so exciting, and it's just about surprising myself, because I've always wanted to make really compelling images, just because then I get to see more of them. That's why I'm comfortable copying people, because it's like I want more of that stuff for my own sake, like selfishly, so I can look at it and be inspired and excited. that was the main thing. Showing it is exciting as well, because that's like the story. I've heard all these stories about painters and stuff, and that's obviously part of it for other people to see it, and I love sharing it. But really the most exciting thing is to get to see it come together and feel really good about it, you know what I mean?
Does your environment impact the work that you're making?
Yeah, definitely live around here in Peckham is like super inspiring. Get to see all these characters, and there's like this proper cultural thing here, like people have got their own community, little ones all split up, and I get to know those people.
Peckham's great because it feels like, it still feels, I'm sure if I speak to people that have been here their whole life, they'll say, oh, it's changed so much, it's so gentrified and everything, but it's like, you know, having lived in Hackney and Shoreditch is like, that's your gentrification there. Like, you're still down here, like there's still, you know, it still really feels like there's an authenticity to the community down here that doesn't feel too, you know, homogenized just yet.
Yeah, like when the football was on and it, like there was African teams in the football, like you saw all these people gathered around on that market road, like you could tell that they were so excited to be represented in that and stuff. There's still that personal thing going on with people that have been here for years, as well as the like new fancy cafe or whatever, you know what I mean?
It's always nice if there's a little hint of that. Like, you know, it's always good if you can still get a nice coffee. It's like, you know, the little things are important. It's just once everything becomes a Pret or then you're like, okay, we've gone too far with this. Do you think your work feels like it was the hand of a London artist?
I think...
Is this world London? Like, if I look at, like, I looked at one of your earlier animations, and it definitely had that, particularly a South London edge to it, and it felt like I was in that world. Yeah,
I always wanted to come to South London because of like artists, like musicians that were here and stuff. I think it's probably a mashup of London and... I've not been to New York, but I love New York from films, and then sometimes it's somewhere else, like kind of imaginary. But yeah, I like the city as a backdrop, but it's kind of like an imaginary city, I think. Mm-hmm. It's like an alternate reality.
I definitely get that sense that there's like a sense of like really familiar every day in your work, but then there's just little elements that take it off into something kind of otherworldly, almost supernatural.
I'm glad that that comes across, like, yeah, just something a little
intentional.
Yeah, I think I like that as stuff. I like a little bit of sci-fi.
Maybe that's your science.
Yeah. And they're slightly wrong. They're not quite human. There's like something a bit like different about them, which is maybe a little bit sci-fi or something. I think it's good to have familiarity, something to throw off the familiarity.
What is it you're looking for then in faces in particular?
In facial expressions, you can there's something, you can sense something, you don't know it for sure, so it's ambiguous, and you can relate to someone, how they're feeling. You can put yourself in their shoes a little bit. You can change what the relationship between characters by how they're looking at each other. Faces is just amazing. It's always a face. First thing I ever draw is always a face. Just personality.
You're listening to Cato here on Radio Juxtapoz. In a second, we're going to be discussing one of the pieces we're sat in front of in the studio. As this is a podcast, I thought it might make sense to help sort of verbally paint that picture, so to speak. Sort of awkwardly on the floor is a canvas about 1 meter squared, filled from corner to corner with shades of piercing blues. It makes a really stark contrast to the more muted cityscapes that seem to fill the rest of the room. In the middle of the painting are 3 characters in a boat. A man is standing at the front, looking down at a small newborn child he holds in his enormously exaggerated hands. Behind the pair, a woman sits cradling her legs. Their airbrushed expressions and body language indicate that there's more to this scene than a leisurely paddle round the lake. Can you talk to me about this one behind you? Because it was one of the ones that that really stood out.
Thank you.
Did this come from an idea? Is this just, again, you sort of scene building from photographs or things like that? Because it feels like there's maybe a little bit more, and I guess it's probably because it's in such an unfamiliar setting, you know. It's like there's something there's a story there behind it. It's not necessarily the barbershop. It's not on the street. It's like, okay.
I've started this one because there's this old screenshot I had from back when I was at uni, actually, of this documentary called Tropic of Cancer, which is when David Attenborough was like 24 or something, and he goes to Australia, and it was like anthropology, it wasn't animals, and it was these beautiful shots of these indigenous Australian fishermen in these little narrow boats on the water, and it was those colours. They had really dark skin, and they were on these black boats, and they were on the bright water. So I started with that, and then I found these faces. They were a similar thing. They were like photography of some West African tribe, and I was excited by it. I like the water, the reflection. It's just fun as well. When it came together, from their facial expressions, there's like, you could start to get the emotion of what was happening. It's ambiguous, but they're obviously in the middle of nowhere on trying to get somewhere, and they're a family, which I relate to when thinking about my own ancestors' migrations and stuff like that. I was putting it together, and then I showed my mate Owen a photo of it, and he was like, they should be holding a baby. And I was like, yes, thank you. And so they put a baby in his hands, and it's in his hands as opposed to hers, which is slightly interesting to me as well. Yeah, it's just like, they're in the middle of the ocean on a little boat, so it's like, they haven't got the best odds, but they've got hope, you know what I mean? So
yeah, no oars.
Yeah, no oars, yeah, just
no engine. I think that's the bit that was like, okay, there's something, this isn't like a leisurely stroll in a lake. There's something more to it than that.
Yeah, they kind of, I think they kind of have to do it. They kind of have to be on this boat. And they don't look too excited, but they definitely have to stay positive.
So where is your background then? What is you talked to a little bit there?
Yeah, my parents are both born in England. My mum's from Yorkshire and my dad was born in Luton, but my dad's parents had come from Jamaica just before he was born. Jamaica has always been like part of my like identity, and I got to go there in 2018 with my whole family. But yeah, I like to think about, my dad knows like my whole, he calls it like matrilineage, like his mum's mum, all the way back to Gong, who was a slave or enslaved. And I like to think about all of them and where they were before, because I got to go to Ghana when I was a kid, and that's where a lot of people came to Jamaica from. So maybe it's that journey.
Does that factor into your? I guess that must just factor into your subconscious, or maybe your conscious as well, when you're trying to tell stories.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there's a lot about like the lost stories that I find interesting. And my dad's actually a historian. Like
that makes sense, because I was like, it almost feels a little less common that they can tell that lineage. Like I can go back 4 or 5 generations. That feels like someone that's actively, tried to dig into that.
He's particularly interested in the history of like Jamaica and migration and music. He wrote about Bob Marley and the Wailers, and yeah, so I got all that in my head from him, and he'd just be plugging away writing it when I was growing up. You know what I mean?
Is it the same for you then when you're making music? Is that the similar? Do you look to tell similar stories with your music as you do with your painting?
I think the music's a bit more personal to me than the paintings have come about in the music. I don't know. Music's like, I just want to give it a go like these other people have. And like, it's more about the writing or more about the writing. Recently I've learned how to play the bass a bit. And now we're playing as a band.
So you're a band rather than a solo outfit. What's the name of your band, sorry?
So we're just under Cato at the moment.
Yeah, because that's why I was like, I thought it was just you doing everything. But guys, I've got a name for a band. Just an idea I'm going to flow with you.
Yeah. No, we've been racking our brains. It's hard to come up with a name.
Yeah.
For a band. But I made music with Jago, one of my best mates, back in Brighton, and then when in lockdown we made this project. So it was his beats and my vocals. So the project was Cato. And then when I got back from Mexico, we were like, oh, we should play it like live rather than just pressing the instrumentals like we used to do back in the day. So then Owen, who's the guitarist, he started getting a band together, and I started learning the bass to be doing something as well as the vocals, so it's not as like intense for me, you know what I mean? Now we've got a drummer and sax and keys. Jay goes on the keys as well as this guy Ollie. So yeah, it's like now it's a band, you know what I mean?
And you put something out on Rhythm Section? Yes. How did that come together? Because I saw one on one of your posts, it was playing our first gig tonight, and this is in like August or something, and it was like, you know, put on by Rhythm Section. I'm like, okay, so, you know, Rhythm Section's quite a big London brand, you know, big London label, Bradley Zero, you know, bit of a Don. So it feels like that was quite, that maybe quick?
Yeah, a bit out of the blue, maybe, yeah. Yeah, well,
how did that come together?
Well, we'd been making music, all my mates who I live with, we were all making music together in Brighton. Then when we come to London and it was lockdown, me and Jago honed in. He's always been sampling, like digging for vinyl and stuff. And then we made this project that we were like, oh shit, this is actually like different and like exciting. And I submitted it to a competition. Bradley was one of the judges, Bradley Zero. When we didn't win, we were runners up. And he was like, you guys should have won. But at this time, I'm now focused on the painting, so it's like a lot going on at once. Mm-hmm. So we just made sure the rehearsals were really good. The live stuff was getting better. And now it will take care of itself, sort of thing.
Is there a connection then between the practices? Do they all feed into the same, or is the music completely separate from the painting?
I think the music is much more about me and my best friends enjoying each other's like company and like doing something other than just sitting around. And then when we made those 6 songs, we were like, oh yeah, like we've got something here. Whereas the painting and drawing is just what I do when I have a minute to myself and a piece of paper and a pen. I will just draw, you know what I mean? That's like my personal thing.
Where are you then when you're painting? What's sort of like, your headspace? For
me, it's like, it's all about references. It's like, I'll get excited by something.
I mean, that when you said sampling earlier, that was the word that kind of triggered that. I was like, it feels like there's a connection between sampling and...
Yeah, I definitely, Jago was sampling. I never really sampled, but Jago was cutting things up from what he loved or what he found. So it's definitely similar to that. It's definitely got a hip hop thing to it. Yeah, because that's collage as well. It's like audio collage. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of that. And I'm listening to Madlib and Dilla when I'm doing it.
Do you think there's music in your paintings naturally?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely got that chop and rhythm, and like maybe this guy's saying something like I'm thinking about that as well, and like these intersecting stories, and then some of them are literally playing a guitar or something. You know what I mean?
Are you still constantly on the lookout for other influences to lean from? Where are you sort of taking influence? Is it just the everyday life, or is it anything in particular? Yeah,
I started taking some photos down the street, but a lot of it is, I just got a sick book of Malik Sidibe, who's a photographer that I get a lot of ideas from. And other than that, I'm digging online. Like there's a page, Black Archives, which just share photographers' work, but also family photos and stuff like that. So I'm always digging through that, and then constantly looking for work from painters to steal something from them as well. You know what I mean?
What was the sort of the next couple of years look like for you then? What's in the plans, and what would you like to be working towards?
Well, I want to just take the paintings wherever they can go and get bigger and better with the painting. I also want to make animations out of them, and I've got a few ideas. Like I'm going to be I've got someone to collaborate on that with.
Do you have a show in mind?
Yeah, I definitely want to work towards a solo show next year, but I also want to start creating some stuff. Put some people I love from London together, and maybe I'll be part of that as well. Like this last month, I've been collecting some drawings from some of my favourite artists, and I want to definitely get a show of that together at some point.
Do you think that you're more interested in the DIY side, or are you going to go down the kind of more traditional, institutional, established gallery route?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that this week, actually. I think I'd like to start off just by doing it myself.
24, I think it's, if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like you get to like 30, 36 or 37, you're like, oh shit, I should really sort my life out. I think when you're 24 is like, you're meant to do this shit, right? You're meant to do it yourself. You're meant to, you know, you still got good network of friends. You know, fucking put that shit on yourself. And I think there's an energy that comes from people that are doing that, because that's where you know, it's like the culture always, you know, it's from the street, it's not from the galleries, right? It's way more interesting.
Yeah, I'm much more interested in. Yeah, there's a lot of people I know who are doing mad work that inspires me so much. So I want to find spaces for that and be involved. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And have it exciting and like fun for everyone. One of the things I'm passionate about is showing people how easy it can be to have fun with it. You know what I mean? To enjoy it at least, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, that's important to me.
As someone then that just sort of, that didn't go through, you know, you weren't painting necessarily at, you know, university or and things like that. How did you learn and hone that technical side of things? Where did that technical ability come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, yeah, I learned to draw just by drawing, like, by just copying, and then I'd spend a lot of time drawing from my imagination as well. So I got really confident with the pencil and the pen.
You draw these scenes before you paint, I say paint, but assemble them, I guess, is maybe.
Yeah, no, not always, but sometimes, yeah, sometimes. With the boat one I drew that all out first. So yeah, it comes from drawing, and then at sixth form, do you know what, I had a teacher at secondary school, Miss Farhi, and she really showed me how to paint, and she showed me like to put green in the skin color and stuff like that. So that's when I really learned fundamentals of it. But I just try and figure it out from images, like how they done it, and then just do it on the job. You know what I mean?
Are you one of these guys that's just constantly sketching?
Yeah, I'm always drawing. It comes in waves though, but yeah, I try and do something every day. You know what I mean? Whether it's a drawing or a painting or make a track, I feel better if I've done something. So I'm always trying stuff.
If you could be one of either, you can't be both. It has to be one or the other. Super successful musician or super successful visual artist. Which one would you go? Where does your heart lie on that?
I think I don't know. It changes all the time. I think since I've been painting, like that would be really fun to have like massive paintings and like keep doing that. The music's so fun to do in the moment, so they're different. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think painter though, yeah.
Would you prefer then looking at your paintings or listening back to your music?
Oh man, they're both so good. It's so fun. It's so fun to do that in both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the funnest part, is when you can look back at it or listen back to what you made. But with the music, it's fun because it's everyone else's input as well. Whereas the paintings, it's like more. I have more control over the outcome, I guess.
Does it feel like there's an energy at the moment? Do you feel like there's a little undercurrent of shit happening for you as a person?
Yeah, I feel quite excited. Like just off the back of Instagram, like I've had a few people shout me for shows and stuff. I got a show in Paris on the 12th at this place called FAWW, and Sasha Bogajev has put me in the show in Beijing. Shout out Sasha. Yeah, there's cool things happening. I'm super excited to keep going. And yeah, we've got the live shows coming up as well with the music, so that's super motivating. But I feel like I want to take my time as well. I don't want to like rush into anything without being super happy with the work, you know what I mean?
That's a good place to be. I think, especially in this current, it just sounds like such an old man. You know, it feels like people do have that. I mean, and I've done it before where I'll go out with an artist, or I'll either film them doing a wall or something like that. And it's like, before you've even got back to the hotel or back home, it's like, hey, can I get those photos? Can I get that thing? I need to put that out now. That needs to be out. It's like, why? why does that need to be done right this second? Like, can't it wait? And we'll just like maybe take our time and make sure that it feels right, that we're all happy, and let things sit for a bit. And I think it's important to be able to just take that, to give yourself that space as a creative to just sit back and go, okay, cool, I'm happy with what I'm about to put out.
For sure. Because I feel urgency to be making things because I only feel good when I am doing it. But that's different to sharing it. That's different to showing it. That can wait, you know what I mean? A lot of the time. But as long as I'm happy doing it or like engaged, that's the most important thing, you know what I mean?
That was Toby Cato Grant for Radio Juxtapoz. Definitely one of the youngest artists we've had on the podcast, but I'm really excited to see what lies in store for the future. And I always get a little bit extra excited when I hear about artists following that DIY mentality, because that's where so much of the real magic lies. If you did enjoy that, don't forget to give us a follow, share the episode far and wide. As always, we'll be back with you guys real soon. Till that moment comes, take care of yourselves and each other.